Good to be back and once again to be part of this opening program to set the themes for our gathering. What an exhilarating experience it is to witness this magnificent celebration in which each of you could see it from up here, this luminous tapestry of religions and cultures and nationalities, the unmatchable opportunity to hear from some of the great teachers of our time, some of the most inspiring leaders, and to gather with friends from across the globe we all too rarely have the opportunity to be with. To use the biblical phrase, truly kosi rivaya, my cup runneth over. What a challenge in a short time to address this year's declarations, raising up the rights of women, emerging leaders, and indigenous peoples, speaking out against hate and violence, addressing income inequality and climate change. All deserve the close attention and immediate action they will receive in the coming days. And while many things have changed in the 5 years since we last gathered, unfortunate patterns remain. Across the globe, we see governments, societies, non-state actors, and yes, some in the name of religion, intensify their practices of hate in speech and action on the streets of our cities and in countries near and far. We see those who resort to violence, conflict, and terror as a way of resolving differences and achieving domination over others. So too, we see the structural, legal, and economic injustice and inequities that still plague too many places in the globe and take such a human toll day after day. Well, we are gathered here because one of humanity's most effective antidotes is the power and effectiveness of the interfaith communities of the world working together. You are here because you know and represent that power. You are here because we all recognize that while we all have challenges we must face on our own within our own faith communities, when we can work together in our vast numbers, we can achieve things none of us can achieve alone. When we act together effectively, it can be a geometric increase in what we do singly. In our engagement and openness to hear and learn from each other, we enrich ourselves, learning about others, including those with whom our lack of understanding had long bred mistrust and alienation. Yet paradoxically, in such exchanges where we must explain clearly our own traditions to others, test our long-held assumptions by new perspectives that we encounter in others, we deepen and sharpen our understanding of our own faith traditions. And perhaps most importantly at this moment in history, in the very act of meeting, sharing, dialoguing, working together to bridge divides and enhance cooperation, we are modeling the kind of world of which we dream and which we strive to create. I am so inspired by the focus on women in this gathering. Of course, across the world, there remain scores of millions of young girls who lack access to primary education. Who knows? The doctors, the scholars and scientists, the communal leaders, poets, and religious leaders whose manifold gifts are lost to those girls and to us when their potential is thwarted by lack of education. Worldwide, almost 2/3 of illiterate adults are women. In sub-Saharan Africa, less than 1/3 of poor girls in rural areas were completing primary education. As Nick Kristof points out, these dismal statistics are at odds with their impact. The yields from investing in girls' education are substantial. An educated girl is likely to increase her personal learning potential as well as reduce poverty in her community. The effects carry from one generation to the next. for educated girls, in turn, have healthier and better educated children. The extremist Muslim group Boko Haram kidnapped more than 250 mostly Christian teenage girls from their high school dormitory, shattering their dreams and their lives. So too, Malala Yousafzai was shot by extremists in Pakistan simply for championing the right of girls to education. These attacks are part of a global backlash against girls' education by extremists and against the potential of the women that they become. We are fanatics. Why are fanatics so afraid of girls' education? Again, as Christoph puts it, because there is no force more powerful to transform a society. The greatest threat to extremism isn't drones firing missiles, but girls reading books. And well, to you too. And of course, you know the statistics, each and every one of you, of global poverty. Well, we are making progress every year and embrace the Sustainable Development Goals as central to our efforts. Still, over one-third of the world's population, more than 2 billion people, live on less than $2.50 a day. More than nearly 1 billion live in extreme poverty, less than $1.50 a day. 1 billion children worldwide are living in poverty. According to UNICEF, 22,000 children die from causes due to poverty every single day. Preventable diseases like diarrhea and pneumonia take the lives of 2 million children a year who are too poor to afford proper treatment. Indeed, it is the children who, living in poverty, displaced from homes to refugee camps, caught in the midst of violent conflict. It is far too often the children who die first. And the global refugee crisis from Southeast Asia to Africa to Syria pricked the conscience of all good people. Who among us will ever forget the image of 3-year-old Alam Kurdi lying dead on a Turkish beach? His 5-year-old brother Galip, his mother Anne, perishing nearby. Indeed, we must not, we dare not stand by the blood of even a single child more. Not now, not ever again. Not in the refugee camps, not on the streets of our cities, not those trafficked in brothels or sweatshops of nations across the globe. We must speak out for and with them in voices so powerful and determined they cannot be ignored. The Nobel Prize-winning poet Nelly Sachs, a German Jewish refugee who fled Nazi persecution, wrote of the Holocaust in words that speak across the decades to us at this moment of global history. O night of the weeping children, O night of the children branded for death, sleep may not enter here. Terrible nursemaids have usurped the place of mothers. Instead of mother's milk, panic suckles the little ones. Just yesterday, mother still drew sleep toward them like a white moon. There was a doll with cheeks deruged by kisses. In one arm, the stuffed pet, already brought to life by love, and in the other, now blows the wind of dying, blows the shifts over the hair. that no one will ever comb again. My friends, not one more. As Pope Francis has powerfully and eloquently and urgently challenged all of us, perhaps the most intuitively religious of the great social issues of our day is the challenge to the environment, to God's creation. Think of all the mosques, temples, ashrams, churches, synagogues, other houses of worship, whatever they may be called, in your varied traditions, of how many there are. Millions of them stretch across the globe. Think of what we are capable of doing, acting together. For most indigenous peoples have always lived and spoken powerfully on behalf of the natural world that sustains us all. And for those of us in the Abrahamic tradition, the foundation of such care is clear. We know why we must be involved. Ladonai haaretzum loah, the earth is the eternals and the fullness thereof. What we own in a trust relationship with God, requiring that we protect God's creation. But the urgency of today's crisis challenges our ability to live out those values. For our generation will be marked as the first to see our planet home, the first to really see it. Indeed, the picture of the whole earth taken from outer space is the defining image, the icon, the revelation of our new generation. No other humans before us ever experienced this phenomenon. And as we see it from afar, this blue-green home with its great forests and seas, mountains and creatures, it is sweet and precious and good the way God created and beheld it in Genesis, Ki Tov, and it was good. But just at the very moment in human history when we see with clarity and wonder and with awe how precious is God's creation, we are suddenly confronted by startling evidence of its peril, of damage already being wrought by our own hands, by our greed, by our ignorance, by our indifference, affecting all of us indiscriminately. Global warming, ozone depletion, melting ice caps, melted faster in the last 20 years than in the last 10,000 before it, rising sea levels, the escalating eradication of entire species of life, destruction of our rainforests, escalating world population. Numerous studies show it is advancing far faster than pessimists predicted even 2 decades ago. Whatever our experience in the particular locale we live in, 2014 was at the global level the warmest year on record, and NASA and NOAA tell us that 2015 is even warmer. Barring dramatic action, we are approaching a series of tipping points that will bring cascading changes, causing permanent, catastrophic damage. And I, like each and every one of you, feel this personally. For this is my home. Everyone I have ever loved lived or lives here. And every grandchild and child of yours and mine will inherit this home however we leave it. We must not betray God's trust in us, nor those of the generations yet to come. And finally, our ability to address any of these issues as religious communities and in interfaith coalition depends on the freedom to act in accordance with our religious conscience. Indeed, religious freedom is bound up with addressing almost every urgent issue we face. You cannot counter violent extremism, confront terrorism done in the name of religion if we lack the freedom to do so, and if societies are torn apart by sectarian violence. You cannot have the stability that is a sine qua non, the essential requirement to build democracy, to resolve conflicts, to engage in providing the indispensable social services that religious communities provide worldwide, helping hundreds of millions, if we lack the freedom to do so. And if people who are oppressed religious groups do not believe that they can live within the system in accordance with their religious conscience, then that becomes fertile fields for extremists to convince them that they should follow them in a violent effort to overturn the system. When we see historic Christians, Yazidis, and other communities in Iraq and Syria being devastated, when we see Baha'is in Iran, Tibetan Buddhists in China, Shia Muslims in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, Rohingya Muslims in Burma, and indigenous peoples in so many countries across the globe, all victims of governmental or societal discrimination, harassment, persecution, physical attacks, sexual violence, enslavement, we above all must not be silent. Sadly, this list is far from exhaustive, but shows a broad range of the serious threats to religious freedom and religious communities in nearly every corner of the globe. Just yesterday, as many of you know, the International Religious Freedom Office at the State Department, I am so honored to run, released its annual report on the status of religious freedom in 199 countries, including yours. Look it up. Yet across the globe, with all of these problems, courageous, brave religious leaders, often in interfaith groupings, put their lives on the line to stand up to violence, to stand up to hatred, to stand between those who would persecute, those who would attack, and their victims. God bless them in Burma, in Nigeria, in France, in Europe, those who surrounded the synagogue that was attacked and someone killed in Copenhagen to allow worship to continue safely, in Pakistan, in Sudan. I could regale you with things that would make you so proud of the bravery, the vision, the courage of people. And I have to say, except in the most repressive of the countries, even those who do have repressive policies and discriminatory policies, as I travel across the globe, the churches, the mosques, the temples are bursting with religious fervor. People are filling them with their prayers and their hopes, and their families, often young families. It is truly inspiring to know the people's determination and courage in living out their lives. To the righteous, to the religiously oppressed in every land who live in fear, afraid to speak of what they believe in, who worship in underground churches, mosques, or temples, lest authorities discover and punish their devotion to an authority beyond the state, who languish in prisons, bodies tortured, spirits too often disfigured, simply because they love God in their own way or question the existence of God, who feel so desperate that they are forced to flee their homes to avoid being killed, and because of persecution, beyond the account of their faith. For all of them, let us act with courage and determination in such a way that we will be a shining beacon of hope and light for freedom all across the globe. There is a teaching from a strand of my own tradition that maintains that when God created the universe, God chose to leave one part of creation undone: the creation of a world of justice and peace. To complete that creation, God gave to humanity, to each one of you and to me, to every human being on earth, that given to nothing else, the ability to understand and choose between good and evil, the blessing and the curse. And then God entrusted to us in our sacred texts a common blueprint for how to build that world of justice and peace, in calling us to be partners with God in the completion of creation, in enabling us to do God's work here on earth. God has ennobled humanity, raised us above mere biological existence, and given to our lives meaning and destiny and purpose. For those of God's children in peril today, we must act now. But for all of humanity, for all the generations yet to come, we must address these challenges for the long run as well. And if we do, this I promise you, with all of our past mistakes and daunting challenges, We are not the prisoners of a bitter and unremitting past. Rather, we can be, we will be, no, we must be the shapers of a better and more hopeful future for all God's children. As Dr. King said, the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. The work that all of you do every day is bending that arc. So go forward with confidence together, for ours, yours, is an awesome agenda, an agenda of justice and peace for all. Let it be fulfilled. Together we can smash limitations and transcend challenges until we have made the kind of world all of our children deserve. May that bending of the arc that takes place here be the blessing of this great gathering, and may it ever be the blessing of your lives. Thank you.